Let's get one thing straight out in the open. I have no intention of ever getting back together with my wife or working on my marriage. These have probably been one of the most miserable years of my life, and I can't wait to move on and forget as much of it as humanly possible. So don't go around telling me to forgive her or start couples counseling because I will simply not do it. Now let's start with a story. I apologize in advance if this gets too long, but I'm on cloud 9 and I want to spill every detail so that I can really savor this moment. I, 32 male, married my selfish, gold-digging, lying devil of a wife, 29 female, 2 years ago. I don't know what could have possibly possessed me at that time, but I used to be head over heels in love with her, even though all she did was make me feel inadequate. My wife used to do some modeling in her late teens and early 20s before she had to give it up for some reasons I'm not getting into right now. She currently works at a high-end departmental store as a sales representative. I don't know if it's her exciting modeling years or being surrounded by rich people in luxury all day long, but my wife absolutely hates our normal suburban lifestyle. Ever since we got married and she got that sales job, all she talks about is how she could have had it all and that she hates being here. I totally understand that she regrets missing out on a glamorous career, but after a point of time, I couldn't help but feel offended. I own a construction business and I work hard. It's not the most glamorous job in the world, but there is good money, and I quite enjoy what I do. I haven't had any complaints about life has turned out to be, except obviously my marriage, but that's neither here nor there. I met my wife on a dating app, and it was quite an unlikely match. We have almost nothing in common, but I guess opposites attract. I liked how different she was from me. She made me look at things from completely new perspectives. I am a pretty average looking guy with pretty average interests, so I never really understood why a gorgeous woman like her was interested in me, but I was grateful for it. But all that was at the beginning of our relationship and marriage. We had dated for around a year and a half when I popped the question and she said yes. I was over the moon. I paid for almost everything at the wedding and spoiled her every chance I got. Remember when I said I didn't understand what a woman like her found attractive in me? The answer is pretty clear. It's money. You see, I met my wife when she was slowly starting to realize that her modeling career was not going to take off anytime soon. So she needed a safety plan. I happened to walk into her life at exactly that time, so here we are. Trouble in paradise began soon after we had gotten married. We moved to the suburbs, and it became obvious that she did not like anything about the life I thought we would have. She always used to complain that she's bored out of her mind, wanted to go on fancy trips all the time, and seemed to have developed an obsession with her looks and clothes. Soon after that, she landed a retail job which just escalated things. She didn't make a lot of the job, but spent her time helping women who had exactly the kind of life she wanted to buy the things she couldn't afford. I guess this made her pretty bitter, and she took all her frustrations out on me. I tried to do whatever I could, taking her out to fancy dinners, sponsoring her Sephora trips and whatnot. But nothing I did ever seemed to satisfy her. She wanted to move to a bigger city, but I had to stay where we were for my job. She hated that too, but the job paid all of her bills, so she didn't say much. I didn't understand what more I could have possibly done to make her feel better, and now I feel annoyed at how much I let her bum me out. I started feeling like I had failed to make her happy, which obviously made me feel bad. I came back from work and saw her packing her stuff. I was obviously confused and asked her what she was doing. She told me without any hesitation that she has found a new job and a man who would give her the life of her dreams, and that she was leaving me. While I had barely processed these words, she said that she had hated every moment of our time together and was sick and tired of my boring job and our boring suburb life. I didn't even know what to say. All that I had done for her this whole time, and she exchanged it for something new without a second thought. She left soon after that, probably super proud of herself. What she definitely couldn't have guessed, and something even I didn't anticipate, was the all-consuming anger and hatred I felt for this woman who had basically made a fool out of me and used me as a cash cow. This is where things get a little obsessive, and I know I might get hate for this, but I was determined to take revenge on my wife. The PI tells me that my wife has moved in with a friend of hers, but she was frequently meeting a man in a BMW. He did some digging and quickly found out that he worked HR for the same brand my wife was supposed to start her new job in. It was pretty clear that she had slept with him for the job. My PI did some more digging and got pictures of her going in and out of his apartment. I made a nice little envelope of the pictures and slid it into his door. The next thing I did was call him from a payphone, saying that I have proof of him sleeping with a married woman he had just hired for a job. I said my next step would be an email to his work and that I'd be sure to send him a copy of the mail with pictures attached. One short phone call and Mr. HR gets his business together real quick. The job disappeared from the table and he refused to see my wife again. She came to me crying about how her job offer fell through and she had nowhere to go. She said she didn't mean it when she said I was boring. I laughed at her face and shut the door on her face. The satisfaction I felt will surely warm my heart for a long, long time. We're almost about to be done with the divorce, and I've never been happier. I told my sister about all this, and she said that I was unnecessarily petty and didn't need to go that far. She also said that it was creepy of me to hire a PI. Am I the a-hole for spying on my wife and getting her fired? I have gotten a lot of requests to spill more details about how my wife met the guy in the first place. I had only hired the PI to find out about my wife's mysterious new job offer and then for the pictures, but I found out the rest during our divorce hearings. A cheating partner might be painful in almost every other aspect, but it sure does make divorce pretty straightforward and uncomplicated. During the course of the last 6 months, she tried to reach out to me and changed my mind several times, but I am done with her for good, and even she has accepted that now. She said that she met him at work, and he told her he works for a huge beauty brand. Apparently, he had been shopping for his young goddaughter. They got chatting while the girl was trying on outfits. She told him that she used to do some modeling back in the day, and he said that maybe he could get her a position in the brand. My wife very conveniently decided not to tell me anything about this whole thing and didn't tell the other guy that she was married either. Although I doubt that would have mattered to him. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, the guy was back in the store and asked my wife if she would like to go get lunch with him and discuss an open position. She obviously jumped at the thought of that possibility and said yes immediately. They went for lunch, and he told her about an opening as an assistant stylist at the brand he works at. The money wasn't amazing, but she'd get lots of perks like traveling, meeting big names, getting free stuff from bands, and things like that. This kind of life is what she has dreamt of her entire life, so it was no surprise that she said she'll take it. They met a couple of times after that, and in her enthusiasm to thank the guy, she slept with him. Shortly after sleeping with him, she got called in for an interview and got the job. I was oblivious to all this while it was happening, of course. She didn't tell me about anything until the day of the interview. Some people have asked how the guy didn't know she was married from her wedding ring. She never wore the ring at work in the first place. It's a common thing many women in sales do. You can sell more to men if they think you're single, as seen very clearly in my wife's case. Now on to answering some other questions. No, my wife absolutely doesn't know about the PI or the fact that I'm the reason she lost the job. I find a very real sense of satisfaction from knowing she's as oblivious to my moves as I was to hers. I'm sure she would never expect her gullible, boring husband to do anything of that sort. Her former lover also has no clue about any of this. I guess he was so scared about the possibility of losing his job that he completely removed himself from my wife's life. As far as I know, they have no contact now. The divorce was uncontested because after trying to talk me out for a while, she just gave up. So we had no reason to involve him in any form during the divorce. My now ex-wife is working in retail again. She didn't get her old job back, so now she's in some mall as a saleswoman. Who's boring now? Not the a-hole, but you're a little creepy. I'm all for taking revenge on cheating spouses, but going as far as hiring a PI and threatening someone is a bit too excessive. Again, I still don't think you're the a-hole, and I get where you're coming from, but maybe you should relax a bit, OP. Not the a-hole. Serves her right for using your whole marriage as an ATM and you as her emotional punching bag. You might have gotten a little too far with a PI, but I love that. All for pettiness when used for the right reasons. I'm a 39-year-old female. My daughter Jane is a 20-year-old female. I am by no means a perfect mother, and my husband Tom isn't a perfect father, but we did our best all her life and tried our best to make sure she never wanted for anything. I know exactly where we went wrong as parents, and I honestly think giving her unrestricted internet access was the problem. Jane is offended by everything, and she claims a lot of things caused her trauma. One of the major things that caused her trauma, in her own words, was my migraines, which I started to experience in my mid-20s. During a migraine of mine, Tom would either take Jane out for a few hours or take her for a playdate, or to either set of grandparents. Jane claims this was traumatic because she was forced to separate from me, despite the fact she did not even know until she was in her teens. I had at most 5 migraines a year. Jane claims me going back to work part-time when she was 15, 3 days a week while she was in school, was deeply traumatic because it meant a change in her routine. That change was that dinner wasn't on the table ready for her as soon as she got in the door, and she had to wait an hour. Jane is unemployed. She's not in college, and she does no housework. She won't even walk the dog she brought home without permission, and has decided the arguments it has caused between us are also traumatic. She runs a TikTok account, which recently came up on my For You page, and like the terrible, awful mother I am, I decided to snoop. Jane has over 10k followers, but most of her comments are genuinely making fun of her, calling her a snowflake and telling her to touch the grass. She had a few videos about how she grew up below the poverty line, essentially in the ghetto, which is a complete lie because she was raised in a lower middle class household in a pretty affluent area. A lot of her posts with nasty comments were about me and Tom and how much we traumatized her over the years by being awful, terrible parents. I confronted Jane pretty much as soon as I got done with snooping, and she blew up saying I had no right to call her out on it. She was saying that it was going in the trauma bank, not her words, but pretty much what she meant. I told her if she wants trauma, she very much needs a different kind of help. I don't know what got into me, but I ended up unplugging the Wi-Fi router, locked in my bedroom, and spent ages on the phone to our service provider canceling her phone contract. She's crying all day, saying it's unfair to cut her off like this. My husband thinks I've gone too far and that Jane will just weaponize this against us, making our lives more miserable. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, but she needs therapy. Obviously, what you are describing is not abuse or traumatic, but she's looking for an excuse for not doing anything in her life. But she needs a job and to help pay for things, but she can't get a job without a phone or the internet. ESH. The problem is not the internet like you stated. You're delusional to think that unrestricted internet access created this problem. You've raised an entitled brat that you allowed to behave like a brat growing up. Stop blaming the internet for your lack of backbone in your parenting. Seriously, if she was claiming trauma about these things, why wasn't she put in therapy years ago to process and understand what trauma actually is? At this point though, your daughter is an adult. Treat her as such and tell her to get her own place. You guys are so worried about her weaponizing shit against you that it's actually pathetic. Not the a-hole. She's 20 and she's not contributing to the household. Everything she has is at your discretion. The internet is not where you went wrong. I guess you went wrong by not instilling in her responsibility from a young age. I'd be setting her rules right now, like ways of becoming a member of the household and not just a burden. My husband's family has a tradition of always eating out at a pizza restaurant for Christmas Eve dinner. Once we got married, it was expected I would join the family for this. Problem is, I cannot eat dairy and this particular restaurant only has pizza. No dairy-free food at all. So last year, I chose not to attend the dinner and just meet up with everyone after. My husband attended the dinner. My mother-in-law was upset with me because they usually exchange presents at the restaurant and said it was rude of me not to attend. But I didn't want to watch everyone else eat and chose not to go. During this past year, my husband was diagnosed with lactose intolerance and doesn't eat much dairy now either. So we suggested that this year we would make homemade pizzas. That way it was still the pizza tradition, but we could make dairy-free options for ourselves. My mother-in-law said no, and said that I specifically was ruining their family tradition. She said we should all go to the restaurant still, and the two of us should just eat beforehand. I still have no interest in watching everyone else eat. My husband and I are refusing to join them and are instead making plans to spend Christmas Eve with my family. We were told we are ruining Christmas for the whole family. I'm starting to wonder if I'm being too stubborn and if we should just go to the restaurant to make everyone else happy. So I'd like to know, am I the a-hole for refusing to go to the dinner? To answer the two common questions coming up, I have an allergy, not just intolerance. Also, we have called the restaurant and there is dairy in their crust and sauce, so they cannot guarantee any dairy-free options. Not the a-hole, I love tradition. I'm a big traditional person, but when family informs you that tradition is more important than actual family members and their health and happiness, yeah, no. Something is really wrong with that. The whole point of traditions is to bring joy. The tradition itself doesn't have feelings. It's not going to be hurt if they change it, but you will if they keep it up. What they're doing is hurtful. You have every reason to point that out and say, no thank you. Not the a-hole. First, an invitation is not a summons, and you are free to decline an invitation for any reason. Second, you cannot eat dairy, and your husband cannot now either. So it would be awkward for you both to be there watching everyone else eat, not to mention bad manners on your in-laws' part for doing that. Third, you offered a perfectly reasonable compromise of everyone making homemade pizzas that everyone can eat and enjoy, and your in-law shot that down for no good reason at all. On a side note, this would have just enriched the family tradition even more because cooking together can be a very fun, bonding thing to do, especially if everyone were to choose an ingredient of their own to add to a pizza and thus make cool combinations. Your in-laws are just being childish and narcissistic with this my way or the highway attitude. You and your hubby and whoever else wants to try out your idea of making homemade dairy-free pizzas should go right ahead and make your own family tradition. Not the a-hole. They are not willing to accommodate at all. They want to stick to their tradition at their restaurant, and you can just deal with it. So you have chosen not to deal with it. My family has plenty of traditions, and they all change a little or a lot as people are added to the family or things change. They could pick a different restaurant to include you, and now that their son can't eat there either, they should be willing to find a different restaurant or respect that you won't be going. I get that this is their tradition, and it totally sucks to change traditions, but if the tradition is about celebrating with family, then actually having all the family there should be the guiding principle of the event.